mark you like?
Though I am a student of actually basically English literature. Later on it was English language. But I started my journey with maths. As a child. First 1, then 2. Other 1 plus 1. And it's maths now that gave me an intuition to language. And I don't find any difference between mathematical intelligence and linguistic intelligence. Those who are very good in maths, they are good in language also. I've seen as a teacher. And I had maths till my university those days. But unfortunately, I had to shift to language, literature, because I was tempted to go to UK, and I thought that if I study English language and literature, I'll get a chance. Because my dream was to visit the birthplace of that man who was born in Stepford-on-Avon. And for that dream, that was my dream, childhood dream. And ultimately, that's why I shifted to language and literature. However, coming back to number, now today's topic is second language acquisition and second language sensitivity. Language acquisition and language sensitivity. Now, many people say, what's the difference between these two? People talk of language learning, people talk of language acquisition, but nobody talks of language sensitivity. Now, it so happened, I came here in July. Some autobiography teachers have a tendency of telling about themselves. I came in July, and obviously,
Chalk for 90 hours.
1, 2, 3, 6, and 90 by 6, I know what it is. Okay, I came in July, and I was very happy to be here. My wife was also happy, seemed to be happy.
That you were away.
Yeah. And my younger daughter was the happiest because she had to face a lot of problems because the location of her father's posting, while the place and this small place nobody knows. And when people came to know about Bangalore is quite well known in the States. President made it very famous. And she told her friend's mother, auntie, my dad has moved to another city. She told her mother of her American friend, auntie, my father has moved to another city. And she says, oh God, they are separated. She told me over phone, the day I came here. She told me over phone that look, this is the way they reacted. My father has moved to another city. Immediately she thought that they are separated. They said, no, he changed his job, she said. And then the lady said, oh, only job. And that's why I think, the language is basically a social art. It is not a science. After this morning's scientific deliberations, we are in the art. Language is social art, and I have my own definition of language. I say it's a performing art. Just like dancing, just like singing, we perform. What I am doing now, I am performing. And how I perform, how I articulate my thought, depends on my language sensitivity. How much language do I know? Well, that is another thing. I told you, I am basically a student of literature. I don't know whether you know the name of James Joyce. Anyone?
Yeah.
He has a nice, not his dumb novels, short stories. He has a nice short story. Well, I will tell you the name. First, just 3 lines from the short story. It's a story of one Mr. Duffy. Mr. Duffy, he is a confirmed bachelor. And you know what a confirmed bachelor means. And I asked some of my friends, what does it mean in Canada, what does it mean? Well, confirmed bachelor. And one day, he met a lady in a concert. And he talked to her. Scene 1 is over. After a few days, he met the same lady in the supermarket and talked to her. Second meeting. Then, after a month, she met the same lady in a party, and now he was bold enough to make an appointment. Okay? First meeting, second meeting, and the third meeting, he was bold because first 3 meetings were accidental. In a concert, in a supermarket, in a party, and now he was bold enough, this confirmed bachelor, he was bold enough to make an appointment. Now, my question is, what's the chance? What's the chance of this man getting this woman? Linguistically speaking. From the Gentles just writes this sentence. Now he was bold enough to make an appointment. And I made an experiment with this, the native speakers, also children and Indian children, and I found there is a variation. Now, has the man changed? Has the man changed now? If yes, how do you know linguistically? If not, how? I don't know whether I put the question. Only one expression is enough to give a hint. Now he was bold enough to make an appointment. Now, is that, what's the percentage? 60-40? Has he fallen in love?
Yeah.
He was a confirmed bachelor, a prosaic person, now he is romantic. When I gave this to the native children, they said, oh no, how can it be? No chance. I said, why? He said, well, you see, even after meeting the lady on 3 occasions, what did he do? He was bold enough to make an appointment. Then I realized, oh sure, if I tell my friend, well, I have to go home a bit early today, I have an appointment with my wife, people will say, well, dangerous. Because we make an appointment with an officer, we make an appointment with a doctor, but we don't make an appointment with the
girlfriend.
Yeah? So I will fall in love. British speakers, native speakers immediately understand it. They get the clue. But for us, appointment is appointment. We make appointment with the girlfriends also. And I want to scare my students that don't make an appointment. Now, have a quick look. We talk of numbers. Look at the numbers. These are some phone numbers. One is of Krashen, and another is Chomsky's website, and all those numbers. First 2 numbers. I dropped 001, the American number code. These are numbers, okay? Please remember it. Now tell me the numbers.
248 163.
Second one?
3913 3927. 3927.
Quickly, number. You don't remember. Do you want to see the numbers again?
Yeah.
You two cannot recall.
Okay? These are numbers. Write down the numbers now. That's why I said that's going to do a lot of work. Can you write down the numbers? Can you?
No.
So many science students and their maths, you know.
That's not bad, that's a rote learning.
Rote learning.
Not even road learning.
There's the rote learning. Are you sure it's rote learning? It can be remembered. Well,
Maybe I have to find some readers.
these numbers can be remembered very easily.
That's powerful.
Oh.
How is it? You know how it happens? 2, 4, 8. You number multiplied by this
2.
2, and then again with the same number. And once you know the system, you can remember it. You can follow it. If you don't know the system, you can't. And now come back to language. We find an utterance in an unfamiliar language difficult to repeat because we do not know the system by which it is organized. Just as the numbers. If you know the system, not the problem. When someone says Nilsi, well, what is Nilsi for me? If I don't know the system, if I don't know that, you see, the structure. Now, most of the Indian languages, even in English also, the adjective precedes the noun. I think in most of the languages. He is a handsome guy. She is a beautiful girl. It goes like that. Structure is that. Subject, then modifier, then the noun. But there are some languages where it's just the opposite. In some Tibeto-Burman languages which I studied, there what happens, that it is the noun precedes the adjective. For example, a beautiful girl in a Tibeto-Burman language will be Malasa Hambi. Malasa Hambi. The Malasa is, Hambi, Malasa Hambi. Hambi is the girl. Malasa is the girl and Hambi is the adjective. Beautiful. It is the other one. Now, if I don't know the structure, I can't understand it. We'll come to that point later on regarding Chomsky. But my main submission is that if we don't know the system, just as when we listen to classical music or even any other, think of a national anthem, for example, Janagana Mana Adhinayaka or something like that. Now, many people sing it without knowing what is Janagana Mana Adhinayaka, what is Adhinayaka, okay, like that. But we can't make the units, identify the units if you don't know the system. Even the word, a simple word like CAT. Now, when does C ends and when does A starts? It is a continuum. And if you don't know, when somebody says, how do you do? How do you do? Almost like that. Or, because how do you do? Nobody says like that. If I don't know the system, for me, it's something not at all intelligible. And that's why knowing the system is very important. Now comes second language sensitivity, is the ability of a non-native speaker to respond to the stylistic features of the target language in an appropriate manner. Before going to language acquisition, I am talking of language sensitivity. Sensitivity, as you understand, the kind of reaction, the way in which we react to the language. Now, this language sensitivity second language sensitivity is a non-native speaker's response to the language. How do we respond? Can we learn it? Or how do we acquire it? That's the problem. And here today, I would like to just revisit Chomsky, revisit Krashen, and I don't dare to go beyond that. Because the problem, as I understand, when I go through all the theories, is that these people living in nice places like Chomsky, where does it? He's from?
Canada.
Actually, he worked at MIT. Now, living in MIT, working in MIT, you can go on with your theories safely. Nobody is going to challenge you. No? Nobody is going to challenge. Because, I'm coming to Chomsky. We Hindus in India, we have a tradition, if you want to worship any god, who is to be worshipped first?
Ganeshji.
Ganeshji. No, Lord Ganesha, we should worship first. And Chomsky is our Ganesha of the linguistic world. And without
Could you explain stylistic features of the day?
stylistic features. Yeah, sure. Should I beforehand? Yeah, stylistic features. If you come, I'll give some examples. Huh? Okay. Because there are a number of stylistic features. The way, the style. What is style? What is style? Walter Petter, the English critic, said, "Style is the man," and I find it a bit objectionable. And I changed it as "Style is the woman."
It's also equally objectionable.
I know. Then what do you do with style? Style is nothing. Style is everything. Problem is that there are stylistic features. There are a number of features which we use. How do we say what we say? Because I think one thing is that what we say is important, but how we say is equally important, or I think is more important. Suppose if somebody said, the different ways of speaking. Now, we were taught structures. In our traditional schools, we are the children of Nesfield. Structures, like that. Can you open the door, please? For the simple. Yeah. Okay. Now, one day I asked the student, "Can you open the door, please?" They opened the door. Yes. Okay, can you open the door? Why did you open it?
Because you asked me.
Because problem is that you know the language. I wanted to know whether you are strong and stout enough to be capable of opening the door. The can. Structure, nothing to do with can. Can means capacity. Can you open the door? Can you leave the table? Once I asked the student, "Can you open the door?" And she said, "Sorry sir, I can't." Yeah. Because you are not heavy. But you see, it indicates that that "can you open the door" is not a question at all. It's a request. We can make it more polite, saying, "Could you open the door?" Could you? Or "Could you please?" I wonder if you could. I wonder if you could open the door. Oh, it reminds me of one of my professors. One day I just requested him, "Sir, I wonder if I can meet you tomorrow." If I can meet you tomorrow, "Sir, I wonder if I can meet you tomorrow." He looked at me gravely. "If you want to meet me, meet me. Why are you wondering?" Professor of English. And I can't teach him statistics. And I kept silent. I said, "Sorry, sir."
Because I am afraid.
Oh, yeah, I'm afraid. There are so many things. Different ways. Stylistic just means different, ways of, different means of saying the same expression, the same proposition. I'll come to this shortly. Now, a second language learner's capacity to respond to language is conditioned, mind that is conditioned by personal, social, cultural, geographic. These four things. It is conditioned. How you react. I gave you the example earlier of the American lady who thought that there is separation in my family. Because it is her personal reaction, response. Even think of the word, think of the word like infant. You know that, I hope most of you know the meaning of infant. Infant means? What? Oh, that's everybody knows. It's Latin, comes from Latin. It means non-speaking. In its negative prefix, it means infant. In Latin, the equivalent word means non-speaking. Infants don't speak. The moment it starts speaking, according to their ideas, it becomes a child. Non-speaking. That's the word infant itself means non-speaking. How important speech is in our identity formation. Now, I thought personally that our personal reaction conditions our response, or social, or cultural. As I think somebody told me that the question of, say, you ask a child in Iceland that for the corner of the house. Those who live in an igloo, for them the concept of corner, what is it? Because our worldview, or think of simple thing, BBC has a program for Asia and the Far East. For Asia and the Far East. Or think of here. Now I come from a place which is called the Northeast. Yeah, that is called Northeast. But if somebody comes from Punjab, nobody says he is from Northwest. Because in India, due to some geographical or some political implications, all those things, that Northeast has become, I find it a bit an expression which is a bit negative connotations. Yeah.
But in Punjab, you would have situations where there will be people to northwest frontier provinces.
Or northwest frontier. Yeah, definitely. But so far India is concerned, there we don't. Nobody refer to.
And in there they will refer to all guys south of Bombay as Madras, So the score will be 1 all, 2 all.
This is geographical question. Or here I find that any place beyond Calcutta is I can't do that. I'm from Calcutta. Finished? Stop there. Or you see, even the question of the way in which we react to this. The two words, for example, one is in India, the famous word, education and movement. Now, it depends on your political affiliation. In Assam, we had a long struggle for about 10-12 years against the foreigners. And I just analyzed the newspapers of the country. Now, national mainstream newspaper, they invariably refer to the movement as agitation. But you look at English newspapers published from Assam, there is always movement. And what is the difference between movement and agitation? It depends on your political or ideological or your particular point of view. Language is neutral. Don't blame the language. We give the meaning, and this has an implication for our pedagogical, for our language pedagogy also. I will come to this later. That is our social, cultural, geographic. I have not used the word political here. I want to avoid the word political, but whenever it comes, you can't avoid it. That how language is a tool in the hands of in our hands. We can use it, we can refine it, and it is I think it is more dangerous than even the atom bomb.
So it will not be confined to the second language. It's a language as such, it may be applicable. Am I not correct?
Huh?
Is it particularly to the second language or as a language?
Yeah, language in general, but as my topic is second language, that's why I am referring. Thank you very much, because to language itself, first language also to be equal, because it's conditioned by our social, psychological, even mental condition also. And therefore, a systematic and explicit knowledge of the communicative and linguistic norms is essential. Because if I am not given the training to look at language from a particular perspective, I can't react to it the way in which a native speaker does. A native speaker needs no training. It comes automatically. You live in the society, you know how to react. You know when a king breathes his last and when a poor man dies. Is it? Does a king die?
No.
Kings never die. They breathe their last. They leave for the heavenly abode. But a beggar never breathes his last. He just dies. Now this is the thing. These are the things. Now in our own in our Indian languages also we have equivalent words. You have seen if the letters that we send after after the last rites and all those things, those functions, they are the kind of language, formal language that we use in our Indian languages is different than the language that we use our day-to-day conversation. Now, how does the native speaker learn these things? He acquires. It comes automatically. But as I am a non-native speaker, learning another language, for me, it is very difficult to acquire that kind of sophistication which a native speaker does it as easily as he or she breathes the air. That is the problem. Speaking about language is very difficult because you are describing language with the help of language. That is the paradox. And thing is that everybody speaks a language, everybody knows the language, but even then there are so many opinions. And when I started preparing for my presentation about 3 months back, I was really, when I went to some of the literature, I was really shocked. And I didn't know what to do because there are not a few theories. There are as many as 40 theories of second language acquisition. 40, again number. 40 theories of second language acquisition, and out of these 40, I don't know, 40 to 60. You can come down to 40, but not less than 40. And even I don't know, think even Krashen can just do justice to 60 theories of second language acquisition. And today I would like to add one, 60 plus 1, 61. But the thing is that while I went through this kind of literature, second language acquisition, I thought of suddenly one day I thought of the map reading, question of map. Now you see, if you have a map reading, then what happens? It tells you the distance between different places, a lot of information you get there, which is useful, but when you go to a countryside, the kind of experience that you don't get in the map reading. And linguists are like people who are interested in the map, not in enjoying the countryside. That's the problem. And grammarians are more dangerous. And there's a Browning has a nice poem, A Grammarian's Funeral. And I don't want to be a grammarian. I am from the field, and I want to enjoy the countryside. I want to explore the world, not like like these map readers who are deprived of the beauty of the countryside, the kind of structure and approach. This it reminds me of a sentence. Change from positive to affirmative to interrogative. Next week's grammar, you find it. One sentence. For example, I am a man. What's the interrogative?
I am a man.
Really? Once I asked the teacher training program, when I asked teachers to do this, and I asked the teachers, do you ever use this kind of expression in your own language? Everybody said, no sir, we don't. One teacher was very smart. He stood up and said, yes sir, I use it. He said, you use it? Not in English. Am I a man? You can translate in your own languages. No? What do you mean in your language? Okay.
I am a man,
And I asked the teacher, when he said, yes sir, I use it in real life situations. When do you? How? He said, yes sir. When I quarrel with my family, I use it. If I were a man, you would not have told me like that. Now you see, how absurd. You ask the children to make negative, active, affirmative, interrogative like that. And we teachers, we have been doing all these things. This is really ridiculous. Now language function, transactional, interactional. Now when the language serves the purpose of expressing the content, that is transactional, and when involves social relationship and personal attitude, that is interactional. Now actually these are Brown and Ewell, it is a bit technical, it becomes a bit technical, I'm sorry for that. It's a question of discourse. Because normally what happens, that we say that I'm using it in a non-technical sense. It's a discourse. Discourse is something more than just a sentence. It's a totality, a text. Of course, there is other connotations are there. Religious discourse like that, but I'm going to that. Social discourse, political discourse. You can use in different ways. Now, there are two types. One is transactional, interactional. And I'm interested in interactional. How do we interact? And what happens when we interact in a second language? Now, therefore, it's a question of form and function. Because a native speaker can use a wide range of syntactic forms. As I said earlier, can you open the door? Could you open the door? Will you open the door? I wonder if you could open the door. And it would be nice if you want to open the door. Like that. We have a number of syntactic forms in our pocket. And we can use it as you like it. Because we are native speakers. We are the monarchs. But when I learned a second language, the poor fellow, unable to use simple sentences, I go, we go like that. And in that case, using different syntactic forms is beyond our control. How do you learn it? That's the problem. For example, language and social relationship. Can you see, these are the examples. Can you give me a lift home? Whom can you say like that? To a friend. Could you possibly drop me off on your way home?
a colleague or like an acquaintance.
Maybe not to a friend. Normally to a friend you don't speak like that. If you speak like that, what will happen? No friendship. Finished. I wonder if I could get a lift home.
Your professor
Yeah. Why do you want that? If you want, get in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why are you wondering?
Yeah, very wondering. And I was wondering. Now it is not a past tense. I was wondering, it is not a past tense. But we can use it also. Are you going home? Are you going straight home? Very diplomatic. No?
Yes.
I don't want to. You should not think that you are doing me a favor. I'm just asking you. And now there are other implications that in that case, if I ask you this question, are you going home going straight home? You can say yes or no. You can avoid me easily. You say, oh no, I'm going to shop, I'm going via the market. Okay, nice. Yeah, you leave. But if you say the other thing, could you possibly drop me? Then I have to say either yes or no. And here comes the question of face-saving device and face-saving and face-threatening. While you speak, we have these two types of interaction: face-threatening and face-saving. Anyway, I should have done that. What is the difference? we Indians are very straightforward.
Yeah.
I don't like it. If I like it, I like it. I like it madly. And if I don't like it, I don't like it. But they are diplomatic.
You really think so? That why do they always give 4 on a 5-point scale for courses that they actually mean to give 3?
Oh yeah, that's the thing. That's why there is saying that they don't speak what they mean. Oh, sorry, they don't say what they mean, and they don't mean what they speak. No, doesn't. We have to be straightforward. When we cry with open mouth, and when we laugh also, we laugh. I have another reason, I discovered it in Ukraine. It is a cold country, very cold country. That's why they don't open their lips, as we do. Even when there was they cry, they don't cry the way we cry because it's too cold. Anyway, I expect the last bus will have gone by now. Another way. And well, I better get started as it's a long walk home. Very indirect, most indirect way of giving a hint. Now, as you mentioned, stylistic aspects. These are the things, different ways. Now, just think of the equivalent expressions in your own languages and see how you do it. And you can do it very well. But if I learn your language, then can I develop all these things? Can our grammar teach us all these things? Can Chomsky's structure or Krashen's input theory or Vygotsky's social interaction, which one is appropriate? And what kind of language pedagogy can teach us all these things? Because if we can't use a language in the proper context, what's the use of learning the language? If you learn a second language and if you can't quarrel in this language, no point. The best test of learning, test of language ability is that ask the person to quarrel in the second language. If we can, then successful. Anyway, now you see that this language and social relationship, its language also is used, and language betrays, language expresses our social relationship also. Just listening to a talk, listening to a conversation, I can very well say who is the kind of social relationship between the two persons. Now, changing the thing. Now, here are some sentences. You see, his father built the house. The house was built by his father. Active, passive. Everybody knows it. It was his father who built the house, not his uncle, not his brother, but it was his father who built the house. It was the house his father built, not something else. It was the house that his father built. What his father built was the house, nothing else. And the house, his father built it. Now, you see, some of the sentences are a bit artificial. And I have followed the example of Brown and Yule of the discourse analysis. They gave another example. It was like, John kissed Mary. John kissed Mary. Mary was kissed by John. It was John who kissed Mary. It was Mary who was kissed by John. John kissed her. Doesn't get this example. And I thought, well, in Indian context, what would be more appropriate? Again, I say the language, second language, it's a social awareness, social context that prompts you, to even to devise, even to think of your example.
I was curious, on the third sentence onward, isn't it simply a question of what you choose to emphasize? For example, you said it was his father who built the house. If the context is different, could it also be it was his father who built the house? Not somebody who raised it up.
There's a question of marked and unmarked. The first one is unmarked. That's the most normal thing. All the other things, even not the third, even second also. Second also in specific context can be used.
Right.
Normally we don't. Because, for example, when you say the Prime Minister came out of the plane and he was greeted by the journalists. The Prime Minister was greeted by the journalists, or the journalists greeted the Prime Minister. Which one do you prefer? The journalists greeted the Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister was greeted by the journalists?
Journalists greeted the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister is more important.
Not necessarily, because it depends on your perspective. If you want to give emphasis to the, I give you an example. In newspapers, it's very often given. 5 extremists killed by the security forces. 5 extremists killed by security forces in headlines of one newspaper. And another newspaper said, security forces killed 5 extremists. And I have seen those newspapers which are pro.
Take the second.
Yeah, they start the sentence with the extremists. I have examples of those newspapers. I know which papers are really sympathetic to their cause. And now here comes the question of 2 things. Normally we say one is called a question of theme and other is really. There is a starting point. How do you start? And the starting point conditions everything else. Because it's the thing that language is conditioned by the question of positions. In which context do you say? For example, when we say, I remember those character certificates. You should buy that, masters and principals. Normally, tradition says, last sentence is like that. Nothing is known against his character or her characters. Then pass from this class and all those things. And last sentence, nothing is known against his or her character. Now, what do you say? What does it mean? Good character, bad character? We use the passive voice when we want to play safe. No commitment. I issue you a certificate saying nothing is known against his character, and next day you commit a murder. I can say, well, I said so far as I know, character good. I did not say a good character. We use the passive voice in order to disown our responsibility, our ownership of the statement. And I noticed that there are some people who use more passive voices than active voices. Just look at it. And I used to advise my young students that before choosing your partner, be careful. Find out whether he or she uses more passive voice than active voice. Because people who use more active voice, they say, I don't know, some psychologists say that they are more active, extrovert, clear-cut, open. And those who use more passive voices, they are a bit critical. Because they don't say anything straightforward manner. However, the house. Now, I would like you to translate these 6 sentences in your own languages. Can you do it quickly? Can you do it quickly? I tried to translate it in as many languages. I asked 10 Kannada speaking persons to translate these sentences. And there is one example. Those who know Kannada can find it out. You see?
Go back. Go back. Those who don't know Kannada.
Oh, okay. Here's the question of active and passive. Now, I was told by Jaruma and others that in Kannada language, passive is not natural. Passive is not natural in many languages. But in English, passive is quite natural, quite normal. Though they are not that passive, but passive is quite alright for them. But in many of our Indian languages, we don't use passive. The house was built by his father. It is not normal. You said last, right from third, but I use it even from second also. But these are all things. These are even artificial sentences. As I told you frankly how I invented the sentences. following that John Kiss Marian like that. I mean artificial. In some context, these are context specific. Only in some context. The house, his father built it. We are passing through a house, and three of us, and then I just go through and say, oh, the house, his father built it, not his uncle or someone else. In that context, otherwise this sentence has no meaning at all. There is a difference between this sentence and this sentence. Now, thing is that you know that this is the different ways in which we can express and changing the theme. Now, here what happens? Now his father built the house. Now, even in I hope some of you have done it also, or mentally you have translated. I am sure. Now, when I got this one, now what is question of even look at the express those who know Kannada or the Avana Thande. Avana Thande, Avana, even Thande also, that this is the positions of these words. Theme was that, you know, his father. His father is the theme, but just changing how does this theme changes from one place to the other depending on the context. And now, as I say, a good beginning is the best thing. How do you start? How do you start your conversation? Communication. And half the battle is won if you can start well. Those say all's well that ends well, but I say all's well that starts well. And this morning started well, quite well, you know. And okay. Now, language, context, and meaning. That not only it's a question of context, as I said. That is, for example, a rolling stone gathers no moss. Sorry, the time is, I don't know, I have to finish up something. Even now I am in the introduction part, so to say. I'll just highlight quickly. A rolling stone gathers no moss. What's the meaning? Is it a good statement, positive statement, or negative statement?
Negative.
What?
Somebody who keeps learning doesn't do anything worthwhile.
When we were young, you know, it was a negative statement, you know. If a young man is a rolling stone, he had no chance.
Making well.
Making well, you know, the girl's father will look down a bit suspiciously because not sure, today this job, tomorrow that job, and like that. But think of this sentence in the present multinational, in the age of the multinational companies, all those things. The rolling stone is evergreen, fresh. It depends. You see, negative. A rolling stone gathers no moss, and that's why in a traditional society, this is a negative connotation. But I was told by some people that nowadays rolling stones are much sought after. I don't know. And think of the second sentence. Our parents are our guests. Treat them well. Innocent statement. Our parents are our guests. And Indian context, you know, guests are. Oh yeah, even if you don't eat, you must feed the guests. Othithi, what is the Sanskrit? Othithi Devo. And therefore, the young man is telling his newly married wife, our parents are our guests, treat them well. But in another context, a wife was complaining against the in-laws. The husband says, don't worry, honey, our parents are our guests, treat them well, they will leave shortly. Possible. It depends on the context.
They are not going to stay.
They are not going to stay long because in a Western society, a joint family is really a bit unusual. Or even simple sentence like a mother to the baby, you naughty, and a teacher to a pupil, you naughty. You see, naughty can be sweet also in a particular context. And that's why there is nothing intrinsic in the word or the expression. I just coined another phrase, you know. Just a man is known by the company he keeps. Man, including. Oh yeah, I use generic term. We are not going to do. A man is known by the company he keeps, And the word is also known by the company it keeps. Because it is the word naughty, in a context is sweet. The mother calls you naughty. It's most endearing. When a mother tells the baby naughty, it is not that negative connotation. But when a teacher, of course nowadays teachers can't say naughty. That will go against. Yeah. I have to change this example. Sorry for that. And now we still look at the sentence. I saw the man with the telescope in the park. Who is in the park? Who is in the park? Man?
Could be I, could be man, could be either one. Both. It could be either one, man or I.
Yeah, that's why I'm just preparing the ground for attacking Chomsky, the God. No, it was, yeah.
There's a great example that's somewhat similar to this, I believe, that Groucho Marx said. I once shot an elephant in a pajamas. How it got there, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. The language makes me think. That way, it's really wonderful. If you develop interest in language, you will forget the whole world. You say, even write that. I saw the man. So means? So means, SW, so means? Look at the dictionary. There's another word. A word.
Oh.
SW, so?
Oh, okay.
My God. Please don't do that. Don't saw people in the park.
Telescope cannot saw anybody.
Yeah. That's why. No native speaker, even but you see, this is an example. I'm quoting it from a book. This example, the computer gave the meaning. Computer gave the meaning so, this is the present tense of so. But no human being will think, I never thought of it that. So is person to see. But if you just go by structure, that's why I'm going to just looking at the Chomsky, that you see, that if you look at the structure only, if you look at the word, its outer surface, then you may come out with this absurd meaning the so. Obviously, this so is not a present tense, a past tense. But ask the computer will give it, the present tense of so also. Another possibility. Computer gives a number of examples, possibilities, and the same thing happens there. Anyway, now quickly we'll do it. Here I'm giving an example. An elderly woman and a man in his 20s meet in the street. They have known each other for some years, but very superficially. Translate the following simple dialogue and think about how it would be different in England or even in the States. This is the dialogue. Good morning, Parthasarathy. Good morning, Meewal. How are you? Well, I'm not too well. I have been struggling with backaches recently. And my salary is quite low. We can hardly make ends meet at the end of the month. Oh, well, I think that is all the government's fault. Let the election be over. You will get a better deal. Maybe. Well, here's my bus. I have to go. Bye. Okay, auntie. Now, if this dialogue takes place in UK or USA, how will it be different?
The second, with Bimal will and not so well, present is pretty good. Second dialogue from D. Well and not so well would not happen. I'm fine. Pretty good. That's it. Get on with it.
Anything else?
Yeah, I think backache is because he's trying to make ends meet like you have to cut
No.
You see, in the Indian context is alright? In the Indian context? Because it's a question of sensitivity, first of all, you see, good morning, Parthasarathy. Now, in UK or the States also, we don't address somebody like except you have blood relation, you see those of you with experience of living in UK or USA, you know it, how difficult for us it becomes. Elderly person, I also found it very difficult to call them by their first name. No? But here, this Padmaja aunty would be quite animal. They can imagine of this using addressing like that. But in India it's not like. First, there is different. They don't address like that by the first name. The first name, not auntie like that. But in India we use it. That is the norm. And elderly lady, if I address her as good morning Padmaja, then necessarily I will come. And even also question of auntie also, I know whether I can use auntie or some other words. In India, we have defined words like that. And it depends on the social and perception and all those things. Anyway, and this is the first point, that it is not acceptable in British English. Then you see that naturally, how are you? Naturally, well, I am not too, and you start telling about the backache and all those things. Well, not that. How are you is not, I am not interested in knowing whether you are well or not. That's a formula expression. How are you? Fine, even if I have a headache, I say fine, thank you. But we will start immediately. Oh, don't tell me like that. I'm going to hospital. Even if when you are going to hospital, you will say yes, oh, fine, thank you. No, now these are things. But then again, think of the last part. I find there are 3 points here. One is addressing as auntie and all those things. That is, does not allow the British or American social norms. Second is, how are you, as you pointed out, how are you? And third is the leave taking. It is abrupt. Abrupt. Normally we in India, what happens, we are, as I said, we are very straightforward. Okay, fine, see you, and leave. They give the signal. They give a signal, pre-departure signal. Okay, we hope we'll be meeting shortly. It would be nice if you can just meet another day, like that. And you immediately get the hint and say, okay, bye, see you. This is transition. Social interaction and transition takes place. But in Indian context, it is not. And therefore, a second language learner can learn the target language within communities rather than strictly as individuals. That's actually my conclusion that I will go. And this will be put in this point. That not as an individual. You can't learn a language as individual. Just as a child cannot learn a language individually. A child lives in a community. He lives in a family. A child, there are examples when children were kept quite separate without any human contact and they did not learn any language. Chomsky said we have this language acquisition device. But even if there is a device like that, in order to activate that device, we need a community. We can need a community. We can't live in isolation because language is a social phenomenon. Language does not exist without language. I did not speak if I live all alone. Why should I speak? Only a mad person speaks by himself. I need language only when there is another person. Otherwise, only when there is an interaction. And interaction facilitates language learning. Not only facilitates language learning, but it's a causative force in acquisition. And therefore, interaction is possible. Now, coming back to pedagogy, in our classrooms, in our traditional classrooms, how much interaction is possible? And are our teachers capable of initiating interaction? That is more important. Now we have English from class 1 or class 2 or class 3 and we expect that teachers will create the environment where there will be enough interaction. Now the teachers who can't use English, how can they initiate interaction? And that's why even this policy of introducing English right from class 1 did not yield the desired or expected result. Now, so long I was talking about second language acquisition, and now second language sensitivity, and now we come to second language acquisition. Now, second language acquisition refers to both to the process and the learner. And now here I am interested in the process of learning an additional language after the first language, whatever it may be. And here I am not referring to simultaneous bilingualism, but bilingualism that takes place after learning one language. There are children, there are non-native speakers who learn two languages simultaneously. Here bilingualism includes multilingualism also. 2, 3, 4, 5, it's possible to learn as many as 4 or 5 languages simultaneously also. But we are talking of learning another language after we have learned or we have acquired one language, home language so to say. The next language, what happens? Subsequent bilingualism, that is not simultaneous bilingualism. And now we can learn in two ways, informal L2 learning, formal L2 learning, both are possible, informal ways and formal ways. Now, what exactly does the L2 learner come to know? How does the learner acquire this knowledge and why some learners are more proficient than some other learners? Now, what I have been trying to, I have not come to Chomsky yet, and Chomsky I will finish in 5 minutes.
Two, three things is that even before coming to the way Chomsky would define native speakers, you have already given the audience the idea that you are going to make Chomsky once. Second thing is language acquisition device you have talked about, but largely you
language acquisition I have not talked. Language acquisition I think I need.
Would be good if you attend more than 5 minutes. He can wait.
Okay, because regarding, I thought that's 60 theories. Regarding Chomsky, Krashen, when I went to literature, went to net, just click second language acquisition, Krashen will come. And YouTube, there are a number of presentations. And there enough literature is there. And I don't think there is much point in boring you with just repeating those things. I want to share my ideas, how I know where the shoe pinches. Even at this age, I was a student of a second language class. Some of my classmates are here. I started learning Kannada a few months back. And this acquisition or learning, I was in the classroom, actually I could not learn it properly because I was more interested in the theory, how the teacher was teaching us the second language, whether my LNG activated or not. Now, you see that it helped. It helped in the way that when I came here first, I could not understand anything. It was almost like classical music for me. Anybody speaking Kannada, and there was no difference between classical music and Kannada speaking. Because I couldn't understand anything. In the classroom, when he gave us some isolated examples, right from Uta, Ita, and all those things in the particular context, because class was always in the afternoon, after Uta. And obviously, you start with the meal, and then you ask, why did you take your meal? Was the meal alright? And they will say, whatever we say, even if we used to say wrong sentences, we would say, Thumba Santusha. Thumba Santusha was always for him, even if it is incorrect. One or two occasions I noticed that I said something incorrect. Thumba Santusha. Thumba Santusha is very pleased. It's not that. But you said he knew how to encourage us. Now, this was what happened in the classroom. We could, among the participants, we could use Kannada because all of us we are non-Kannada speakers, and that's why we are not ashamed of making mistakes in the classroom. We are on the same boat. But outside classroom, we started hesitating. That's the problem. It is almost like that, why I learned Hindi. We studied Hindi up to class 8 in those days. But even now, I can't speak in police society. I don't speak Hindi because I'm afraid of mistakes, especially whether whether, for example, whether the gadi jata hai or gadi jati hai. And that's why, this is the problem. Now, here the question is that it is not that what exactly does the L2 learner come to know? What do you know? Because already we have one language. Our LAD has absorbed the elements of our first language. And now comes another language. And what's the position? It is almost like, who said it, that how to make adjustment between the first language and second language. Who said it? Samsung regarding English, the relationship between English and the Indian language, mother tongue, English is the mother tongue. And it was Chetan Bhagat. Chetan Bhagat wrote in Times of India once that, my mother tongue, which was Hindi, he said that Hindi is my mother and English is my wife, and I want, in the true Indian tradition, both should live in the same house. Now, that the kind of adjustment, the first language and the second language, how do we do it? Now, our Ganesha comes. Language acquisition device, LAD, we are born with it, it is there. I don't know why it is somewhere here. But one thing Krashen also said, that this LAD is same everywhere. And the brain, whether the brain of an American or a Britisher or an African or an Indian, they're same. That's the blood is the same. And the mechanism also must be the same. Then why is the difference? Then if provided with correct input, the LAD predisposes all people to the question of the acquisition of second language. Now the problem is that these people that think that learning of the first language and learning the second language, they are same. LAD. Now they are obsessed with, there is some sort of an obsession with language acquisition device. And this device, how does it work? This device, does it help the children or does it help the older people? How long is it active? Some say it is active forever, even after 60. But from my experience, I can say there is no more active after 60. Because another problem with these people, great internationally known linguists, is that how many languages did they learn? Krashen, he learned German also. He learned some of the European languages. But an Indian multilingual, Indian born in the Indian multilingual situation, and an American born in American monolingual situation or bilingual situation, there's a difference. For them, learning another language is learning a foreign language. But for us, learning another language is not learning a foreign language. And there are other variations also. For example, for a Bengali speaker, it is very easy to learn languages like Oriya, Assamese and those languages, because they have some common properties and LAD can adjust easily. But when it comes to, say, a Dravidian language, there you need some extra mechanism, and Chomsky is not familiar with, I think, this situation, or Krashen was not familiar with this situation. What happens? And there's a lack of research on this field. There's another problem. These great linguists, they are so great, they stick to their position. But if you try to use it in the real situation, real classroom background or real multilingual situation, then you see that it is not that easy. LAD does not work in the same way as it does in the USA. Let this LAD come here and you see this device, how does this device work? Because what is the initial state, what is the nature of interlanguage, what is the final state? There is no final conclusion. They have been debating. There are a lot of discussions are there, because when the learners have knowledge of L1 at the point when L2 acquisition begins. When I start learning a second language, I have already learned it. I have learned the phonology of the language, I have learned the morphology, I have learned the syntax of one language, and then I start learning another language. And that is the problem. Or, so far as, there is a question of parameter setting, which refers to LAD. The Chomsky said, because Chomsky also is a very intelligent person, no doubt, we have to admit. He changed his position a bit. Chomsky of the pre-65 days and Chomsky later period, that's the difference. Because then he came with the universal grammar. And this, because 1957, you know why 1957 is important? Why is 1957 important? 1957? Well, why is 1757 important? 1757?
Industrialism.
In India?
Plastic.
Yeah, 1757, Battle of Plassey. That sealed our fate. Okay, 1757. 1857?
First war of independence.
Huh?
First for independence.
So
You see, here is super mutiny.
That is Britishers' way of
Yeah,
saying
you see the language. You see the language first of it. Super mutiny or first world
Indian independence.
I remember once I told the Britisher, America became independent. Ultimately, America became independent. He said, oh yes, they separated. No Britisher will say America got independence. They say, oh yeah, they separated. The way of speaking, for them it is separate. They won't admit, because they became independent. They separated. And see, now I find that 1757 Battle of Plassey, 1857 our first war of independence, and 1957 is the publication of the syntactic structure by Chomsky. Three important events. It changed the whole course of the course of event in the linguistic world.
I think the same year when Skinner wrote this verbal behavior.
Yeah.
Skinner's
Thanks.
verbal
I
behavior.
wanted to say that we need to introduce Chomsky by bringing in what existed before Chomsky and the way Skinner was talking about the way infant acquires language in his verbal behavior. Then Chomsky's work, when he talks about language acquisition, makes a departure from that view. Until we tread on that journey, I think there is a lot that is happening through stylistic, which might not always be useful. Like the kind of adjectives that are again and again being used about Chomsky, these great linguists and all. I mean, see, we had Darwin, evolution, in the morning, okay. Charles Darwin is far, far away. Chomsky is yet alive, okay. We might have differences with his theory, but we need to introduce his theory in a way that we let our audience know about verbal behavior and what were the views of behaviorists before Chomsky and how then psycholinguistic turn and that paradigmatic shift happens. Until we tread that ground, I think it would be a bit unfair.
Well, thank you for that, sir. Thank you for your perspective and point of view. Because I told you that if we start, we need a number of seminars like that. As you understand, also, and that we need a number of, because I have approached it from my own point of view. I have a structure. I have a structure, and I think, because it's a question of my understanding. You are right. I do honor and I do expect you. I do accept your point of view that question of Chomsky's reaction to the behavioristic theory, how language is learned, whether it is behavior or not, and it may change. Now, I'm not just undermining Chomsky. If you please don't misunderstand it, I'm not undermining him. And moreover, I can't map it or I can't proceed it step by step. This is difficult. I just wanted to approach it with reference to my area. My area is stylistics, language use. Chomsky was not interested in language use. He was interested in structure. Structure. And that's why you are right. You may say that how do I correlate these two? These are two opposing propositions. No? Chomsky was not interested in those things.
The distinction is between competence and performance. What you are talking about is performance, and Chomsky talked about competence. So any references to Chomsky in this seminar are not really related in that sense. And secondly, Chomsky talked about first language acquisition, I believe, and he didn't talk about second language acquisition or learning. It was only Krashen who brought about second language acquisition, and that too he made two distinctions in that. One is second language acquisition, and second is second language learning. So in that sense, from the point of view of stylistic, you would say that Chomsky doesn't exist at all.
I can ignore him totally. Because, well, then, how much time is left? Time is there, no?
10 minutes. No, you can go.
Because I didn't. Well, okay. You see, Chomsky.
Wow.
Deep structure, surface structure, generative phonology, phonemic constraint, allophonic constraint, and all those things comes here. You may say that stylistics has no place to do it, but I think it has. Now you see that it's a question of in any language there may be a question of, say, come to generative phonology. How does it happen? Generative phonology, how do you generate? Now in Chomsky, that as a famous example, in 1968 Chomsky's book, this book, The Sound Pattern of English, was published. This is another important date for us. 1968, Sound Pattern of English. And I used to tell my students, don't read this book till you get your MA. Because it makes everything so mathematical. It is almost like that, I give this example, plus plosive plus voice becomes null, fusion null in the context of M, nasal, plus nasal, and what finally. Examples are com, bom. You see, this sound is plus plosive plus voice, and that's why it becomes B is not pronounced, but the moment you have this one, it is pronounced because it is not in this context. And Chomsky gives all these arrows and all those things. Now it makes so mathematical. Or even think of simple word like electric plus ity. Then he gives it like this. All those things there. That you see, it is co sound. But the moment it is in the environment of ity, it becomes, it says K becomes S in the context, like that, it goes on like that. Now, these things, or even simple thing, I try to use Chomsky's this generative phonology with reference to Indian languages. Now, you see, there's the one word, goddess Saraswati, yes, studied the Saraswati, goddess Saraswati, goddess Saraswati has one name. What that? Okay. You know this word, huh? Okay. Now, this word, actually, this word comes from BAK plus. Okay. Now, this go comes from this ko. It is the deep structure. We know it already. Because there's another word called bag, tiger. Now, this Bag she is not the goddess of Bag, but she is the goddess of Bak. Now, we as a native speaker, we know that this go comes from this ko. Nobody should teach us these things. It comes automatically. It comes automatically because in the deep structure it is Bak plus Devi, but in the surface structure it becomes Bak Devi, Ko becomes Go. Or just as in electric plus ity, or is it, we say, impossible, but impossible, but incongruent. Now, these two, there is no, you see, in and here you find that there is neither phonologic constraint nor phonetic constraint. In Chomsky, he discusses all these things. In generative phonology, phonetic constraint, phonologic constraint, and or this allophonic constraint. For example, dogs, roses. Now, simple S in English, plural marker, simple S becomes sometimes it is S, sometimes you see these things. Depend. Now, a native speaker of English need not be taught these things, but for us, no. If we are exposed to the target language, acquisition, as they say, acquisition is there. If you live in the society, if you listen to correct pronunciation, no problem. Otherwise, some amount of conscious learning is necessary. Otherwise, you won't make a distinction between DOCKS and DOGS. One is dogs, other is dogs. And obviously, you have to make a difference. Now, generative phonology, generative morphology are the deep structure. And ultimately, question structure, Chomsky's famous sentence.
Colorless green.
No, what is that? Colorless?
Colorless green ideas sleep furiously.
Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Now, this is possible. Just as I invented some unusual, unnatural sentences. House built by his father, like that. Of course, they have the meaning, but Chomsky's sentence has no meaning, but it's possible. Now, just a speaker who can produce all the correct, grammatically correct sentences of a language can be in trouble if he does not know the social norms and the stylistic acceptance of the language. That's my point. Just structure is not enough. If you go for structure only, then it is problem. Chomsky, you see what happens, that as you are right, you said that Chomsky's theory is with reference to the first language. He did not talk of second language. It was Krashen. Krashen used LAD, said that LAD is activated if we acquisition, and he goes a step further. He makes a distinction between acquisition and learning, and he said that learning, learning is knowing about the language. Learning is knowing about the language, and acquisition is for the language. Now, there are problems regarding terminological problems also. That do you call it second language learning or second language acquisition? And in the Indian context again comes the question that what do we do? How should we proceed? Now, very quickly, Krashen again, his monitor theory, and it is based on Chomsky's concept. Why I use Chomsky with reference to stylistics, all these things in my presentation, is that I can't jump to Krashen without paying homage to Chomsky, as I told you earlier. And that's why, after paying homage to Chomsky, we should go. Because LAD, Krashen also uses LAD. And just now, how can we say that without Chomsky, we can't discuss LAD? Anyway, children need comprehensible input to activate the LAD, and it needs the acquisition of second language. Now, it is not only children, even the adult learners also. Isn't the case? Though Krashen refers to children, but we find that even with second language learners also, you have to activate. Now, the question is, what is the position of this LAD? Because to a child, 5-year-old child, LAD is quite fresh, unspoiled. 15 years, 20 years, it becomes a bit old. And now after 30 years, 40 years or 50 years, it is like an old car. And and sooner you will dispose it of better. Because this Aladdin, he makes a sweeping statement. He makes a sweeping statement that if you get the input, Aladdin is activated. And comprehensible input. Now, question of comprehensible input. Now, he gives some examples also how we can do it, showing pictures, incorporating gestures, drama, music, repeating new vocabulary, translation, all these things. Now, my point is that, are not these things at the elementary level? Can you develop the language sensitivity of a second language learner with the help of all these things? Does teaching a language mean using pictures and visuals? It's at the elementary level. We'll come to bigs and all those things shortly. That it is at the elementary level in order to develop the sensitivity, in order to be able to communicate in real life situation, you should go beyond that. And now I+1. The acquirer understands input language that contains structures a bit beyond his or her current level of input. Look, here also question of structure. The word structure is there. A number of times it is used in his book on second language learning, structure. Now, as I told you earlier, structure is like the map reading. Only structure help us because that's the structure which is beyond his present level. Present level is I, and +1 means a bit higher than that. Now here just comes to in because question of, I find that his findings quite relevant. Question of basic interpersonal communication skill and cognitive academic language proficiency. Now, why have I brought Cummings here? Because my purpose is language use. Language acquisition means when we acquire the language, how do we use in a real life situation? Just not the theoretical part. And what are the theories? Now, when it refers to basic interpersonal communication skills and cognitive academic language proficiency, the BICS is just survival vocabulary. You have to survive what you need. We may call it survival kit. Now, even the survival kit also, as a second language learner, I found that there are two types. It is not in any book. I said the primary BICS and advanced BICS. I think you won't get it in any book. Because Cummings actually does not make any distinction between these two, primary and advanced. He said that interpersonal communication skill, BICS is there, we need. But there also there are maybe two levels. Because BICS, he says, this is survival vocabulary. But survival are also two types. Basic survival, just getting your shelter and food. But in order to survive, you need not only shelter and food, something else also. You have to communicate, and therefore even we can make a distinction and we can say primary BICS and advanced BICS. Now primary BICS here, familiar with the surface structure, understand the sentence meaning and enables to function in the society at the very elementary level. Now there are two things, sentence meaning and utterance meaning. Sentence meaning again comes to the surface structure. What was referred to earlier, surface, sentence meaning. What does the sentence mean? Can you open the door? What does this mean? Or, I am afraid. Here, just sentence meaning is not enough. Utterance, that's why in discourse analysis we call the question of utterance meaning. What does it mean? Here, of course, I'm not using the technical terms of pragmatics or all those things. The pragmatic consideration will also come. The semantics, pragmatics, all those things. But time won't allow me. Now, this primary BICS, just surface structure, and advanced BICS, that one understands the deep structure, understands the utterance meaning. And here we make a distinction between the sentence meaning and utterance meaning, familiar with the slangs and the idiomatic expressions, and can converse about an endless number of topics. Now, here is nothing new. I am just quoting from Cummings, what he said. his Bergson, his definition of Bergson calc. And calc is familiar with the academic vocabulary, but second language learners are prone to low proficiency in cognitive academic language. That's the problem that we have been facing here also, and that's why we have this learning center, the university, with the question of this cognitive academic language.
But it could go the other way around also. One could have cognitive academic language proficiency and one may not have the basic oral communicative proficiency in a particular language, like a library language.
Yeah, that's why we Indians, when we go to the States of the UK, they laugh at our language because we speak the bookish language. You are right, because we are taught, but we are good in academic writing, but most of the students are not. That's why our students who appear in this in the American universities, you have to write an essay. Yeah, not of total. I mean, the SAT and GI, you have to write an essay, and most of the students get poor marks there because the kind of essay writing is not that easy. We take it for granted. But here also, our university also, there is a provision that you have to write an essay. Because your academic proficiency, the kind of, it's a question of register, whether we can use that kind of register or not, academic writing. Now, you are right that it may be both, good in academic writing, but hopeless in interpersonal communication. Somebody is very good in interpersonal communication, but can't use the appropriate context. Simple as I mentioned. Once I asked some teachers to write an essay, and I gave them the topic, write an essay on asking teachers to write an essay in English, and that too on this topic. They took it. Some teachers are a bit offended. But they wrote, after teacher training program, you have to do it. And one teacher started the essay like that. The cow is a four-footed domestic animal. She does not give us milk. The cow is a four-footed domestic animal. She does not give us milk. Is it all right? You can start an essay like that. Can't you write like an essay like that? Then I asked him, why do you write like that? He said, yes sir, that's not what happens. The cow does not give us milk. Cow's milk is for the calf. And we rob the cow of the milk and say cow gives us milk. Well, it is his perspective. And he said cow is a symbol of exploitation. The cow is a symbol of exploitation. Now it depends on how you do it. You can start the question of the topic sentence, how you start your sentence and how you do it. Well, that's a different story. Now, natural order hypothesis, he said that every learner acquires the target language in predictable manner. Well, he said it's based on research. When you learn English, for example, third person singular, books, dogs, these things come earlier. I go, he goes, that comes later. In learning all the languages, these things happen. Now, when I started learning, as I said, at this age, then I found that that nouns came first. Nouns came first. This general in all the languages happens. Verbs, present tense comes first. Then past tense. In the case of past tense, I found the problem. It came sequentially. It did not come the way I was taught. And here Chomsky Krashen is right. Krashen said that there is a natural order hypothesis, and that is not conditioned by the teacher. Teacher can present it his own way, and we have our own mechanism. In the grammar book it is said that first noun, then pronoun, then adjective, then adverb, like that. But we don't learn like that. And moreover, another aspect is the question of spatio-temporal references. The question of spatio-temporal references. I found that just as children learn it with reference to spatio-temporal reference, space and time. When the mother teaches the language, the baby, naturally she refers to those objects which are in the immediate experience of the child. Not something about the plane or a plane or the sheep or something like that. Starts like that. Question of the space and question of time also, present tense. What happened? Not that sequence, of course, but the question is that how do the grammarians have their own agenda? They are presented in one way, but our receptive capacity is the same. We have it another way, and this natural order does not depend on the teacher's presentation. An effective filter, low, high. He said that when the language a low position and allows it to enter and high position. Now, this effective filter is almost, it regulates. Isn't the case? It regulates. And if we are too conscious, then we that it affects the acquisition. Now, again, the question of acquisition and learning is that they are two separate things. Now, question is, are they separate? Are they totally, do they come from two opposing poles? How can we be sure that this is acquisition, this is learning, this is conscious, this is subconscious? From the subconscious we can go to conscious, from the conscious we can go to subconscious. Aren't they possible? These are debatable questions, and that's why we need further research. The learning system, as he said, first acquire, next learn. Now, in the Indian context, how do we acquire? If we live in the society, it's nice. And nobody speaks RP. Who speaks RP in England? Only Indians. They use the dialect. I was in Midland, and in Midland it was really horrible. You go to the shop, you go to a library, they don't speak the RP. It is almost like a foreign language to them. Now the question is that as soon as you get, even here also, in the campus, in the Polish society, educated native speakers of Kannada, for them, I can at least make some sense of what they say. But when I meet the actual people, the shopkeepers and like that, they don't care for my poor knowledge of Kannada. They speak their own way. These linguists say the sympathetic foreigner talk. But when you are in real life situation, nobody is sympathetic. Nobody will wait for you. They won't speak slowly. They will speak in the normal way, and you are at a loss. You can't understand. When we learn the first language, the mother or the parents are very careful. 1 word, 2 words, 3 words, repeating time and again. Even we also utter the same sentences, sometimes meaningfully, sometimes without meaning. But in the case of second language, except outside the classroom, you don't get the sympathetic support. But Krashen says that that somebody will provide you I+1. And why is that I+1? Now, as I said already, it's a question of subconscious and conscious, subconscious. But I find it a bit of fuzzy distinction and no interface between acquisition and learning. Secondly, learning is a process. You need various degrees of learning which can both be beneficial. Learning can help acquisition, acquisition can help learning. Why do you make that as if they don't meet together? At least in Indian context, I find that they are complementary to each other. Now, can success in second language to be attributed to input alone, Krashen's theory ascribes little credit to the learner. He ignores the learner. Nowadays we are talking of learner-centered activities and all those things. Now you are ignoring the learner. It is that you say that give the input, that's enough. But the learner has a creative mind. That's why even in the field of teacher training, I don't call that we can't teach a train. We can't train a teacher. You can train a dog. You can train any other animal, but not a human being, because we have a thinking mind. We can help him to grow. But you can't train him and train him the way in which you train some other creatures. You can't ignore his inherent capability. But here Krashen said, give the input. On the arms, give it to the children, give it to the second language learner, and everything will be all right. Krashen presents I plus 1 as if we are actually able to define what is I and what is 1. As if I think that I plus 1 is in Krashen's pocket. Take it. This is I plus 1. It is not like that. Like the American, what is the 60s PL. There was some skill. Yeah, it is not something like that you can import it. That here is the I, 1, you have I, and here is 1, take it and get it. It is not like that. And even regarding input also, I find that many critics also, it is not only my opinion, many critics find that it is a bit not very clear. Sometimes said that it is language itself is the comprehensible input. Sometimes said that it is through external contextual clues that you can make it input. Now, if you are propounding a theory, you should be very precise. But this precision is lacking. Critics say that Krashen has a number of critics wrote. That's a great many of critics wrote. And that's why the Krashen is not very clear in his conceptual framework. And when Krashen is not clear in his conceptual framework, who are we? We are just confused. Now, authentic L2 input is no doubt important, but does not secure successful language development. When students observe L2 communicative practices, their minds don't simply record what they hear, they need social interaction. I said that this is not a video camera. It is not a video camera. Then you just say that students, second language learners, they are behaving like that and immediately it is recorded. No, it is not. They need social interaction. Without interaction, it's not possible. When we talk about what is being learned, second language, it is not to talk about the language itself. Here comes the question of social culture knowledge, appropriate for therefore that kind of use, and what I referred to the very beginning, that kind of social knowledge, the kind of cultural knowledge that we must get, otherwise it is never possible. Just giving input like your arms, aid, hearing aid won't do. You must be the question of immersion in the culture, language, culture of the target speakers, the target language is important. And therefore comes this man.
No, I think Parthasarathy.
Well, I don't dare, no. It's not, I can't even dream and I don't have any vision like that.
Your person who you wanted to meet,
Vygotsky.
Yeah, I want to meet him because I find that I like him and I think that he speaks sense. Because Chomsky's theory, I find, goes against common sense. Because when he said that he doesn't give importance to communication, language as communication, no. Structure. If you know structure, you know everything. But here is a man who is a human being, a social being. And as my topic is language as a social art, language as a performing art, language as a means of communication, language as a social reality. That's why Vygotsky is that I find him more important than others. And children acquire knowledge as they are engaged in social experience. Unfortunately, all of us, we have forgotten our initial experiences. That's the problem. How did we react to this world when we came to this world? How did we react? What was the first reaction when we came to this world?
Crying.
Yeah. And you see, it reminds me of a famous saying that when I came to this world, I cried and everybody laughed. And when I go, everybody will cry, but I will laugh. Because I will go to my ultimate destination. Now, anyway, coming back to it, that you see, our reaction to this world, that was an expression of our social awareness. We reacted. As a child, the child, first of all, the child listens to the sound. Child recognizes mother's face. How does a child recognize mother's face? How does a child recognize mother's voice? And how does it happen? And then later, slowly, we go a step further. Because I know this. I had a pathetic experience. Again, coming back to probably we are human beings. Language is a part of our self identity. I left my child when she was only 10 months old. After 1 year, when I came back, she refused to recognize me as her father. She came out with the photograph. She was 18. She was about 1 year to 8 months old at that time. This is 10 months. It was 20 months. 22 months. She came with the photograph and pointing out the photograph said that is her father. And even she did not believe her mother. I felt, and it took 3 days. Only when others came, her aunts, aunties and others, they came and convinced her, well, he is your father. I got the certificate. Now you see, this is children are innocent. How do they react to the social reality? It is not that you can't dictate the children. They have intelligence. They have the intelligence. Then unfortunately we don't know and we don't remember how we reacted. And that's why we go on with our all absurd theories and say this thing and that thing, and already 60+1 theories going on there. Language is social concept that is developed through social interaction. Again, I repeat it. Language acquisition involves not only learner's exposure, but process goes between thought and language. That comes again question of thought and language. But those are again philosophical questions. A lot of seminar topics can be there on thought, thinking. Is thinking possible without language? Is language possible without thinking like that? But this is the question of the making meaning, and community places a central role, and zone of proximal development. But again, those are all linguistic jargons, we will say. Linguistic jargons. But one thing, Vygotsky and Krashen, they are not opposed to each other. I don't find they are opposed. Because actually it is an extension, we are calling it an extension. Because there also he said that it is a question of comprehensible input. And here he says that what happens that there are one stage a child, a learner can perform all by himself. But there is another stage where he needs the help. And that help, then in that case there are some similarities between the two also. But problem is that Vygotsky is more interested or tries to position the child or the learner in the larger social context. And as I consider language as a social behavior, as a social, social phenomenon, that's why comes the question of Vygotsky here. Because, well, JP data I omitted. Second language sensitivity is not a piece of knowledge additional to the second language learner's acquisition. Here, what I said, second language sensitivity is not like an appendix. It is not like an appendix. Where is it? This side or that side? This side. I had it operated already. The appendix. Second language sensitivity is not an appendix that you can just remove it. It is an organic whole. That's the question. Krashen and others, they did not use question of sensitivity. Those right from Carter and others, even Halliday also now comes to question of if you go to the book like Cohesion in English, Discourse Analysis, Brown and Euler also, you find this language question of language sensitivity. Krashen had no business. He didn't use it. We are using it. But thing is that language sensitivity is the refinement of language acquisition. That's what I said. When you refine, that if you can achieve that refined state, a higher state, or then you develop that sensitivity, and that's the part. It should be an organic. It is organic part of the communicative competence. Now, even there also. Now the question is that, as I think that second language sensitivity cannot be taught. What we teachers can do, we can provide opportunities. If you provide the opportunities, then that this kind of pragmatic competence can be acquired, and which will ultimately lead to sensitivity. Now, we should create the opportunities, because competence is a type of knowledge that learners possess, develop, acquire, use or lose. Choice is yours. This time is over? Okay, I'll finish it because that's why we should develop it, and we teachers should create the environment, and therefore all it is grammatical competence, sociolinguistic competence, discourse competence and strategic competence. And if we develop all those four competences, these strategies, then we can develop the language sensitivity. We should not, grammatical competence, the structure is not enough. Sociolinguistic competence, okay, but something else remains. Question of discourse competence, that in language in its totality, and strategic competence, that you should know the strategy. When, how, and whom. Who speaks what language, to whom, and when. It is these are these four. Who speaks what language, to whom, and when. The British are afraid of 3 W's, you know. You know it. I'm sure I'm repeating times about the wife, wine, and work. They say most uncertain 3 things. But here we have who speaks what language, to whom, and when. That is possible only when you develop this kind of sensitivity. It's a question of exploration of language, neither acquisition, not learning, but exploring. And my submission is that it's a pleasure to explore the language, and we teachers should inspire the learners to explore and to enjoy. And these are references. Thank you.
Would you like to take up questions and answers, or separately, or how do we do it? I don't know if there are many questions, we can have it after.
It's actually why don't you?
Or maybe.
Let's start.
Can I?
Yes, sir, I think. No, if you are more interested in cheese and.
Maybe we can take 1 or 2 and after that we can break.
Yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned about registers. I'm curious to know about the difference between registers and, say, academic language. So, for example, say mathematical registers.
Yes.
So, what would a mathematical register look like? And then comparing academic language.
Mathematical register, that's a defined registers. Defined registers means not defined. Well, I give the example. I hope you're a science student. Are you a science student? Okay. Now, you see, when you write the scientific experiments, now we say when water is boiled, we use a lot of passive constructions in scientific languages. I boil water and I find you, and nobody writes like that. When water is boiled, it evaporates. Like that also. Now, more passive construction, for example. Now, that kind of register, that kind of structure is common in scientific writing than in our writing in literature, for example. Now, in mathematical, the kind of language that is used in mathematical deliberations, you mean to say?
Yeah, I mean, when you say register, I'm just trying to compare it. I mean, how would it be different from, say, an academic language? Is it different, first of all?
No, academic language. Well, academic language. Well, right. Academic language is the umbrella term, because mathematical register will come under this. Obviously, because mathematical register will come under again, say legal register. That will come under in the law school, for example. Those of my friends who teach in the law school, English teachers, they also teach academic language, but that is a defined type, like that, notwithstanding anything contained herein. It starts like that. Notwithstanding anything contained herein, like that. The moment somebody starts like that, I know, be careful, this is a lawyer. Because his language is like that. Mathematical, the kind of language that is used in mathematical discussions, that comes under academic language, no doubt. Academic register is there. But there are some parts. Academic language, while you are referring to what I coming so also, there was a question of the students acquiring academic language. Academic language, the umbrella term which includes defined registers once again. And therefore, that would be like that also. I'm not very familiar with the language used in mathematical books. But there may be some.
So, yeah, from your presentation, it felt as if they are two different things. So, I mean,
No.
registers and academic languages. So,
No, academic language, academic registers and academic language. The academic language itself is a kind of.
So if I were to say that all the languages have their registers in different fields. For example, if it is a legal language, it has its own register. If it is a mathematical language, it has its own register.
No. What he said that the question of register used in mathematical writing.
Yes.
Yeah, it will be there. Register is there, but that whether it comes under academic language.
Yes, it will come.
Yeah, that's why it comes under academic, but it is a sub branch.
But as if it's used by Kamal, he talks about academic language in general, I think, in terms of language acquisition. And register is a specialized term for vocabulary used for a particular subject, or structures used more prominently for a particular subject.
the subject itself.
Yeah, the differences are made between dialect and register. Generally, when we speak, we talk about dialect as a social language, while register as a subject specific language.
You define register, so you define the sports register, for example. Sports. In the sports, they use another kind of register.
Like when we say windows in computer language, that is meaning and that is part of register.
Yeah,
And
for
when
example,
we say window in
yeah.
general, then that is part of our language. So that's how I think that makes a difference.
No, even
That the language is its register.
Even the word, for example, pixel you won't get in the register of law, for example.
Yeah. And pixel in the register of computer might be different from pixel, maybe from in the register of cameras and photography.
That's why. But thing is that if they are not, again comes question of this question sensitivity. that kind of defined resistance. Because simple things that that question of in English we use you for example, you for everybody. But in some Indian languages we have addressing the other person with respect to a child. How we use one word for the child, one word for when a man comes with half-clad person comes, you can use it addressing on one way. When the same person comes with his tie and all those things, the moment you change it. Like this. Yeah.
It's a related question that I have. See, one of the main themes of your talk has been about language sensitivity, whether it's possible to inculcate that when you're trying to teach that and so on. Now, you have stayed at the language level, more or less. So we have spoken about Indian local languages, and we have spoken about English and how the sensitivity would differ. Now, even if we take one language, because the sensitivity is so highly influenced by the culture that we're talking about. So if you're talking about Indian English, for instance, you talk about British English or US English. Now, all of these do have their own peculiar sensitivities. So I'm thinking of the pedagogical implications of that. So when we are saying that it should be a part of, language sensitivity should be a part of language training, what sensitivity are we talking about is something that we still need to think about, because it could be a sensitivity of Indian English, or it could be a sensitivity of, there are slight differences in that, it need not be exactly the same. Similarly, if you are teaching in Spanish, let's say, the Spanish and the Brazilian Spanish, again the sensitivity might differ. And to what extent can you really expect the teachers to go to that level? It's not all that easy, because it won't come till that teacher has really stayed in that sort of an environment, really immersed in it. It's not something, as you were rightly saying, something that you can pick up from books. Extremely difficult to do so. So do you really practically expect people to have that sort of immersion in those environments, in all these different scenarios, and then come and train them? So these are things, it's not that I'm pointing out sort of drawbacks in what you're saying, but these are things that we still need to think of, I think, when we are looking at the pedagogical implications of making sensitivity a part of the language training. These are extremely complex things to do, and I wonder how we are going to do that.
Can I say you answer?
Okay. So you see, that's the problem, because when American expert tells us that language sensitivity, when they learn foreign language, they can go. We can't send all the teachers, all the students to UK or America to develop that. It is not possible. Now, thing is that how do you do it, and what type of language and background is that, whether American or the British or the Indian. That's the point. No, which one? And how is it possible? That's why we need some research work in our own situation. We have to find it out. Because it is not that easy. I agree with you. But can you ignore it? Because if we ignore the sensitivity, then learning is half.
Yeah, to explain that sensitivity, when I was translating, when the person was dead, that the very person who was asking the translation said, that is my father, when the person was expired, he is writing. The person is dead, I was writing. Then the person was asking me, when the person expired, so that is the right of sensitivity he wanted in that translation and other things. So
that's why I gave you the example and I asked you to translate. Now, later try see how difficult it is. Because you are right, it is conditioned by our socio-cultural context also. Without the socio-cultural context, without taking into account the socio-cultural context, we can't develop it. It's not possible. Now, how to do it? We are in India. We are teaching a language which is highly conditioned by the culture, which is totally unknown to us. We're not familiar, and how to make these opposing things, how to balance it. The question of balancing is the problem, and I don't have any solution. Only one solution. I thought that if we can create the environment in the classroom, that's why.
So, is it the language? Is it the English we speak here in India? is the language spoken in UK or US, or language doesn't change itself with the context? Like in India, when we speak English, this is not the language which is being spoken in US or UK. This is the language we are using here, and the language has changed itself. And what we are learning is not the way English people learn, and still it is English.
Yeah, right.
I have one point.
Yeah.
So I was thinking like there are certain skills and certain competences which transfer across the languages and across subjects. So I think the sensitivity is one of them. For example, you develop sensitivity in your own language. So it will, some aspects of it will get transferred to the language, second language also. That is my
No, yeah, it happens. I can say, you see, our folk tales, for example, our nation. The moment is time. Once upon a time, there was a king. Now, in translating in any Indian language, it will be almost the same. Once upon a time, there was a king. And what is the second sentence? Immediately, the student can say. But we can't say, once upon a time, there was an astronaut. Once upon a time, there was an astronaut. It's possible. Can you start a story like that? Because the moment you say once upon a time, it takes you back. You say, there is one book which is called The Morphology of Russian Folktale. In that book also, that it studied that all the folktales of the world, they have some common elements which can be transferred from one language to other. Even the politeness theory, the politeness. How do we language? Now we have in our own languages also we have different ways of expressing politeness. If I am confident, if I know how to use politeness phenomenon in my own language, I can easily transfer it to a second language. Because here there are similarities. Because language is a behavior, and there are some. Here I find that Chomsky, though he concentrated on structure, but there are language universals, and I think there are literature universals also.
Yeah. I believe that sensitivity is not divorced from language. The moment you start using language, whether it's Indian English or American English or whatever you're using, you gain a sensitivity to the language, because language is so social and so context related that sensitivity cannot be divorced from language.
This seminar, as I understood it, really to try and portray why sensitivity which is peculiar to a particular language or a setting is important. So as I have understood him, correct me if I'm wrong, is trying to say that the language training should include the sensitivity bit into it if it has to be a proper comprehensive training. Otherwise it leaves, as you said, it's not an appendix that you suddenly put from elsewhere. It has to be an organic part of that. Now this sensitivity, as we understand, is to some end, I completely agree that there is some bits of it, which are universal. So, but the example that you gave about politeness, now the way a Japanese is polite in his language, and the way in US, this, take for instance the black English, which is a slightly different form of English than a very polished white English. Their politeness and the Japanese politeness is very different. So even if you have learned how to be polite in Japanese, it will take some effort for you to learn to be polite in a black English in a black neighborhood. Now that's the sensitivity bit coming in there. So I completely agree that the very fact that you have brought it to the notice that it is something that people should be looking at is in itself valuable. But the point that I was trying to raise is that it's an extremely challenging thing to try and incorporate in language training, and I'm just wondering to what extent we can do it. That was the point that I'm essentially
So I think that is a very valid point and important point that you have used. But I was thinking from taking clues from what you have said, that for example, like the exercise what he did with us, he has taken some sentences and then he was trying to tell us how these different sentences mean differently and how these are used, and then he has critique of certain statements also. So if we do it in our own language, won't it build a type of awareness towards this sensitivity? Won't it help? I mean, I'm just giving one way of going towards sensitivity in the second language also.
The point is that we don't. it's like it will be an artificial effort in your language if you're not going to do that. So for instance, the example that we
one more point, just small point, that you are saying it's some artificial effort. I look at it as a can we call it a meta-linguistic? Like what I'm saying, I'm just trying to engage with it. What I'm saying and why I'm saying this, why I'm using this statement instead of this statement. I'm analyzing my own sentences. That is the type of exercise. Just
Avinash, where do you see this artificial thing coming in acquiring it, or like having the sensitivity in the language? Where do you see it? I don't get.
The use of active passive, for instance. Now, if we are saying that by using passive thing, which is uncommon as I've understood it in Kannada, we could perhaps develop a sensitivity towards how it's being used in English. Now that's a forced thing that you're going to have the child adopt when you're teaching them Kannada. You're getting my point. It's not something that they will acquire. You will have to do it separately, artificially in schools, because the language that they're using in the community does not have passive, as I've understood it. I'm just taking it as a So it is something that you're giving them in school. Right? So first thing is that the first point I was raising is that for that first you have to have teachers who are completely immersed in that. Please don't forget that, because that's a very important thing, and I think it's a very difficult thing to do. Second thing is, then even if you manage to do that, then you are in some senses twisting the local. Twisting isn't the right word, but you are somehow forcing the local languages in what is not its natural form.
You're not helping the child to translate the entire language in the local language, isn't it? We are talking about a separate language as a second language by itself, its acquisition and its activity. We are not seeing it as a mirror image or putting it or learning this language in view of this language. We are not doing that.
But definitely, this example from the passive is not there in Kannada. So that is not that the teacher is supposed to teach the child to have passive voice in Kannada. That is, if the teacher has this understanding that different languages have different features. So Kannada is a language where you cannot find passive voice. So if the teacher has this understanding that different languages have these different features, and then with this understanding the teacher goes to the classroom, the teacher will behave differently. The teacher will understand why the child is able to make a passive voice in English, because the child is coming from Kannada background. So if that sensitivity is there, then the teacher will behave differently. That is the point I think he has made here.
Yeah, see, the knowledge that there is something called passive that exists, that's a different thing, right? And the sensitivity of that in a language is a slightly different thing.
I also think that we need to be a bit thinking it through even as we talk, because you were using stylistics as a term a lot, and I thought that I should do a stylistic reflection on the language that you have used, that sarcasm that you have used a lot. And what I was thinking is, some of those sarcasms would have brought laughter to some of my colleagues in the audience, but would not have brought the laughter to all the people equally. So the way even in your audience, people have responded to your sarcasm as deep, isn't it? So if
even the word you are using, sarcasm itself is like appealing for me. Because the kind of like term you are using.
Sarcasm, I think again question of the sarcasm.
Exactly.
If I use any sarcasm, I think I use with reference to myself. Because actually sarcasm has a negative connotation, and I don't know.
Your sentences at times were generating laughter, but not from all of your audience. What does it self say? That sentence that you are speaking in English is interpreted by Arun in one particular way, is interpreted by Himanshu in another way. And when I interpret your sentence about language acquisition or about Chomsky or about Skinner, someone else making the interjection on Skinner, I am bringing in the previous knowledge. Now, why I am making this point is that when you are linking your thought to pedagogical practices, it's very important to understand that some of the terms that we are using are not very objective terms. Like language sensitivity would be were to use language sensitivity in a relative sense, rather than an objectified, the way you were criticizing Chomsky and others as to believing in structure, that it's a language that can be broken into units, and that's what you were critical of. The same way, when we talk about language sensitivity, it might be differing from one person to another.
In respect of sensitivity, I can only quote
thank you, because he has a very valid and very strong approach. No, that's all right. I do honor it because that's the way. That's what I want. We must react to language from our point of view. What I have done is my personal approach. And because I think the very purpose of this seminar is just to relearn and look at the things that already we took for granted. Now, think that language sensitivity is a term. In the dictionary, you don't get any clear definition of this. Till now, it's not there. There is a meaning of language acquisition is there. But language sensitivity as such, I consulted the dictionary also, it is not there. Only in some stylistic discussions here and there that foreign language learners must be made sensitive to this language like that. Now we should be you are right, we should be very clear. When we use these things, should be very clear. But actually there is no definition at all. And Chomsky and all those things, I am not. I told you that though there may appear that there is sarcasm, I compared him with God Ganesha, but with due respect, because Chomsky generative phonology, and for your information, this generative phonology of English was my PhD thesis. I got it from Chomsky. Therefore, but my point is that just structure and knowledge or learning a language is not enough. We should go beyond it. And how to go beyond this thing? There is nothing else. There is nothing new. My understanding, my approach, and I'm happy that you have your own approach, you have also your own point of view. That's why. Otherwise, how can we explore? I talk about exploring the language. We should teach, our pedagogical objective should be how to explore a new language. And only when we learn, only when we start exploring. And without exploring, and teacher's role is to help him to explore.
Just that you brought in the point of teacher and related to the competence sensitivity argument that was going on. In the Indian context itself, and given the nature of our schools, right? If we see the urban population, which has a mix of English and Indian language speaker, right? And the teacher perhaps is also acquainted to both the languages and has sensitivity towards both languages. But in a lot of rural situations, where a teacher's first language is the language in which she teaches, and she is forced to teach a second language, wherein she does not have the competence, she cannot engage with the language at the structure level, leave aside at the the level of performance or the level of interaction. So all of this that we are talking about is so much contingent on the teacher's capability to be able to be competent enough in the second language that we are talking about. So I personally believe that in India per se we do not have a strict notion of second language like we would have in the US, where there is a Spanish and an English language, and they are two distinct languages that we are talking about there. But here in India, when most languages interflow and have a certain kind of commonality between each other, and at the same time our languages, our native languages are, are a mix of many other languages and things. So I personally find it extremely contingent on the teacher, and we cannot underestimate the amount of effort it requires for a teacher to become competent in the second language. I'm not making a statement. I think you brought in a very important and relevant points about what needs to happen in order to teach a second language effectively. But what it means for a teacher to be able to teach it effectively is a separate question altogether.
Yeah, it's a separate question, because that's why I said that we in India, we are so much conditioned by Eurocentric theories. Because what Krashen did, and for the notion of second language, for Krashen and notion of second language for me, there's a difference. And especially the teacher in India, we are asking teachers to teach a language which they themselves don't know. This is something which those who are, but unfortunately, we'll have next month we'll have the discussion that now in our position paper and our NCF also we have just mentioned that Krashen and Chomsky, Vygotsky, everybody is mentioned there, as if just by mentioning their names we can make miracles. It's not possible. You are right. That teachers themselves, they don't have the basic proficiency. When they don't lack basic proficiency, how can they teach language sensitivity? You are right. That's why we should evolve our own methodology and we should be free from the kind of colonial hangover in the academic world.
But what further complicates what you're talking about are the socio-economic pitfalls that we have. There's a lot of these types of things. I was in northern Karnataka not long ago. The kinds of things that I heard was amazing. That first of all, teachers don't even get to school, forget being competent, they don't even come to school. They come to school on payday, collect their salaries and for the entire month. The rest of the day is spent on chit funds. And probably some true stories. I have not verified that. But what was also equally interesting was this question of the caste of the teacher. So the parents suddenly say, I won't send my child to school because the teacher is of a particular community, what should my child go to learn in that community? That kind of thing. So when you add those factors which are very real, on the ground reality, especially in rural areas, this discussion to me becomes a very academic discussion, not of any kind of implementable structure of the really. I don't know that this is something I was struggling with in another subject, but I'll just say that the ground reality is so stark and so bleak that I see. I don't know where we are going to make an intervention that gets out of the urban space. Even within the urban space, I see a lot of problems that are not that different from the rural areas. The further away you go from the urban centers to lower order cities, I see the trouble.
Even in metro cities, which are much more multilingual.
Absolutely. I've seen that here in Bangalore, lots of schools. Lots of schools.
Yeah, that's the real problem. That's why I think next step will be how do we address this problem with reference to our field experience. This is the pedagogical aspects. Because mine was more concerned with the theory and theoretical things.
These points are implications of the classroom practices.
Yeah.
So next we can deal with the classroom practices. These have implications, sure.
My objective was just to activate
Language sensitivity.
Explore. Thank you. The feedback was there?
I have a suggestion because there are a lot of questions raised and many of the friends' time is very